the people you see pictured here are the actual researchers involved, and they're part of the University of Wisconsin up in Madison, so not too far away. I always like to include pictures of who they are so you can see them. And before I actually talk about the study, I want to transport the people in this classroom about 3,000 miles around the spherical surface of the planet to Colombia. Colombia is in northwest South America. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I have that wrong, somebody please correct me. And this is an actual image that I took from Flickr of Colombia. Feel free to laugh, because I try really dry humor. Yeah, thank you. Colombia has a population of about 45 million. The United States is over 300 million, so they're much smaller. And the average Colombian citizen makes about 20% of what the average American does, which makes them not wealthy, but also not devastatingly poor like someone in Africa. It's a very beautiful country for tourists. So if you're, I've never been there personally, but these pictures make it look pretty nice. The people look fairly happy, and they have a motion blur actually, if you see them in real life. So that's not the blur of the camera, and I'm not sure if this guy is homeless or what, but if you lift that veil up of the tourist side of Colombia, you discover that for several decades they've been kind of shrouded in this cloud of civil strife and violence. And about 3 million people, a little bit under that, have been displaced by that violence. So they've been forcibly moved because of armed conflict. And this started in 1964. I included a French idiom, which I think speaks to the French people in the class, hopefully. That essentially, a protracted armed civil conflict means that these two sides have been fighting for so long that they've forgotten why they're fighting. It's just kind of a fact and a way of life. But in the last decade, things have gotten better, but violence hasn't disappeared. Just this year, I think about 250,000 people have been displaced. So, society in Colombia is changing, and cities and urban life, where about 74% of the population live, are the epicenter of that change. And mobile devices have become fairly widespread in that country. And that basically leads to the mobile device having tremendous potential to connect people and influence how people live. And these are actual mobile devices that people use in Colombia from their largest mobile provider. You notice that you don't really see any full-featured iPhones or Blackberries, although they do offer them, but not many people use them. So actually getting into this study, it looks at communication technologies, not just mobile devices, but I'm only going to be talking about mobile devices. So it looks at newer communication technologies and the relationship those have with political participation. I'll talk about what those mean. And this is in Colombia. So they actually were observed in Colombia. So these are the hypotheses I'm going to bring up, but I didn't like this version, so I rewrote them. I always hate the very verbose, abstract ones. So I wanted to make something a little bit easier to read. So the first one, people who use their mobile phone to consume news, maybe CNN.com or the CNN equivalent in Colombia, they'll be more active in expressing their political opinion online. The second one, people who express their political opinion online will be more likely to use their mobile phone to essentially engage their friends and other people offline. And here's a model of what that looks like. So this is their hypothetical model they put together. So you have these 3 items on the left. That's considered to be expressive participation. So online, you might be looking up news, posting comments on a blog, or looking up stuff on your phone. And if you do more of that, then that means that potentially you'll be using social networks or your cell phone to mobilize your friends and others into doing things offline. And offline offline participation really just means voting in a local election, giving or donating money, signing a petition, volunteering for charitable causes, also attending a political demonstration. So there's a number of different ways that they quantify it. Because they're from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, they're not in Colombia all the time. So they hired a professional local polling firm to go out to 10 cities in Colombia and survey the population there. And they were targeting urban adults, so that's really all this study is generalizable to. And they got 1,033 responses, a pretty fair number. And just jumping right ahead to the results, support was found for our two hypotheses, and which really leads to this guy. So we were just looking at this a second ago. They basically found confirmation that this is working, and this is how this cascade effect of from online to offline behavior is working in Colombia. So the more you use your cell phone to access news content, the more likely you are to participate in other forms of online expressive participation, like blog posting. And the more you do that, the more likely you are to use your cell phone to mobilize people, and then the more likely you are to be involved in doing things like voting in local elections, giving or donating money, signing petitions voluntarily, and attending political demonstrations. That's really all the study looks at. The obvious strength, I think, is that it offers a potential model for other countries which might have a similar context of not having a long tradition of democracy. And it supports something that we can see taking place right now. Unfortunately, it's only one point in time, so a study over time at multiple points would show potential cause and effect. It also doesn't look at why someone would be looking for information online. It only asks if they are. This is relevant to one of the articles that hopefully everyone read, because you should have written about it in your paper that you turned in. And that's the author of that paper, Castells. And practically, this really means that new communication technologies, if you put them in the hands of people, have the potential to revitalize public discourse. Now, I would hesitate to say that, to agree with this, because in the United States, every kid has a cell phone, yet youth who reach voting age don't jump out and go and start voting. They've been very apathetic. So, in the United States, with a longer tradition of this, maybe it doesn't work here, but potentially in other countries, maybe in South America, perhaps in Africa, you start putting mobile devices in the hands of younger, educated people, and they're going to use it to talk about politics and maybe influence the democratic process. The assumption here is that democracy is good, which isn't, I guess, given. But I guess as an American, I like to think that it is. And that's it. These are my cats looking. I was outside in the balcony. These are my cats looking at me from outside. They wish they had a cell phone to call and tell me that they wanted to come out, but they didn't. So, does anybody have any questions?
Say, vote, vote, get out and vote.
Well,
Go back to the picture.